My fiancée said I'd embarrassed her by wearing cheap shoes, so I told the DJ to cut the music, took the mic, and told everyone what she did. A 30-year-old guy, and I've never been the flashy type. I grew up in a small 2-bedroom house, the kind where you learned early on to fix what was broken instead of buying something new. My parents raised me to value honesty, hard work, and contentment, not labels or price tags. So when I met Lauren, she felt like someone from another world. She was everything I wasn't: confident, polished, always in control, the kind of woman who turned heads when she entered a room. We met at a friend's engagement party. She was wearing this emerald dress that looked like it belonged in a magazine, and yet she smiled at me, the guy with a $40 tie and scuffed shoes. It felt surreal. From the start, she made me feel like I was enough. She said she admired how grounded I was, how I didn't chase status. I believed her. For months, our relationship felt balanced. She introduced me to her world of fine dining and designer stores, while I showed her the joy of quiet nights cooking together and saving for real goals. But as the engagement planning began, something shifted. Suddenly, everything was about presentation. Her parents were excited, but it always came with a hint of judgment, like they were politely tolerating me. Lauren started talking about how we needed the perfect venue, the right photographer, the impression we'd make. I brushed it off, telling myself it was just wedding stress. Still, I couldn't ignore the way her eyes flicked over my clothes, sometimes that half-second scan that said more than words ever could. I told myself love was enough to bridge the gap between our worlds. But looking back, that was the first time I felt the quiet distance forming between us, one that would soon grow into something much uglier. And it all started with the smallest cracks I chose to ignore. Lauren always had a way of making ordinary moments feel like performances. When we started planning the wedding, it was no longer about us. It was about the audience she imagined watching. She'd scroll through Instagram showing me pictures of grand weddings and saying things like, "See, this is what people remember." I'd nod, trying to be supportive, even though every detail she chose came with another zero attached to the price tag. I suggested we keep things simple, a smaller ceremony, something intimate and meaningful. She laughed, not cruelly at first, but with a kind of disbelief. "Babe, we're not kids." "People are going to talk," she said, brushing it off as if practicality was something to be embarrassed about. That line stuck with me. People are going to talk. It became her justification for everything: the imported flowers, the designer invitations, the custom cake that cost more than my first car. I found myself working extra hours, cutting back on things I enjoyed just to keep up. My friends joked that I was marrying into high society. My mom, ever gentle, warned me, "Son, don't lose yourself trying to impress people who don't care about you." I smiled and told her not to worry, that Lauren just wanted things to be perfect. But behind that perfection was pressure. Subtle comments became sharper. She'd say things like, "Can you please iron your shirts properly? My family notices these things." Or, "Let's get you fitted for a new suit. That old one looks ... tired." It wasn't malicious, not yet, but it chipped away at something inside me. I started to realize that I wasn't just planning a wedding. I was being molded into an accessory, something to match the picture she wanted to paint. And the worst part, I was letting it happen. I started working longer hours, convincing myself it was just what a good fiancé did. Every extra shift, every late night was for her happiness. I even sold a few things that meant a lot to me: my old guitar, my grandfather's watch, to help pay deposits and upgrades she just couldn't compromise on. When I told her, she kissed my cheek and said, "You're such a provider, babe." But deep down, I knew she didn't understand what those sacrifices meant to me. The deeper we got into planning, the more I realized I wasn't making decisions anymore. I was just agreeing. When I mentioned maybe saving a little money for the honeymoon, she laughed lightly and said, "The honeymoon will come and go. The photos last forever." I should have seen the red flag waving right in front of me. But I told myself love meant flexibility. There were moments I tried to talk about how expensive everything was getting. "Lauren," I said one night, "we don't have to compete with anyone. It's our day." She looked up from her tablet side and said, "It's not about competition. It's about standards. You wouldn't understand. It's just how my family does things." The way she said you wouldn't understand hit harder than she probably realized. So, I pushed down the discomfort and focused on doing whatever it took to make her happy. I picked up freelance work, skipped dinners, and even dipped into my savings meant for emergencies. All so she could have the perfect day she envisioned. When I finally tried on the wedding outfit, I could afford a clean, simple suit and polished black shoes. She barely looked up. She said softly. It's okay, I guess. That one word, okay, carried 1,000 judgments. I didn't know it then, but that tiny moment, that careless tone, was the first real crack in everything we'd built. The morning of the wedding should have been the happiest day of my life. Instead, it felt like a performance I wasn't invited to star in. I woke up early, went over my vows one last time, and polished my shoes, the same pair I'd worn to every important moment in my life. They weren't designer, but they were spotless, simple, and mine. I looked in the mirror and told myself it was going to be fine, that once she saw me waiting at the altar, everything would fall into place. When I arrived at the venue, everything was picture perfect. White roses, glass chandeliers, waiters gliding through the crowd. Lauren was already getting her makeup done, surrounded by her bridesmaids, all in matching silk robes. I walked in quietly to tell her the photographer had arrived. She turned, gave me a once-over, and her smile faltered. "Are those the shoes you're wearing?" she asked. Her tone wasn't shocked, it was disappointed. I blinked, confused. "Yeah? Why?" she sighed, setting down her makeup brush. "They look cheap." "I told you this was a formal event. My family is going to notice." For a moment, the room went silent. Even the bridesmaids exchanged awkward glances. I tried to laugh it off. "Lauren, they're clean. They match." She cut me off. "You just don't get it, do you? You'll embarrass me in front of everyone." Her words hit like a slap. I didn't know what to say. I felt my throat tighten, but I forced a nod and stepped out before anyone could see how much that hurt. Outside, I leaned against the hallway wall. Listening to the faint laughter from the bridal suite, my best man found me there a few minutes later. He looked at my face and didn't even need to ask. "You sure you still want to do this, man?" he asked softly. I wanted to say no, but instead, I whispered, "Let's just get through today." And right then, I didn't realize today would become the day everything unraveled. The ceremony began under a sky so blue it almost felt staged. Guests filled the pews, their perfumes mixing with the scent of fresh flowers. Soft music played as I stood at the altar, hands trembling slightly. On the outside, I probably looked calm, but inside, I was a mess of nerves and quiet heartbreak. Every time I caught sight of Lauren's parents in the front row, their proud, polished smiles made me feel smaller, like I was an actor who'd been cast in the wrong role. Then she appeared. Lauren walked down the aisle in a gown that glittered under the sunlight, every step graceful and practiced. The crowd audibly gasped. For a moment, I forgot everything, the arguments, the insults, the tension. She looked breathtaking. But when our eyes met, her expression wasn't soft or emotional. It was calculated, like she was making sure every camera caught her best angle. When she reached me, I whispered, "You look beautiful." She smiled for the crowd, but didn't respond. The priest began his speech about love, respect, and partnership, words that felt heavier with every sentence. I kept trying to believe in them, to believe in us, but each vow, each prayer, sounded like a promise only one of us intended to keep. As we exchanged rings, her hand felt cold in mine. The guests clapped, and flashes went off, freezing our smiles in time. I heard whispers about how perfect everything looked, how graceful she was, and how lucky I must feel. If only they knew the truth behind that picture. When the officiant finally pronounced us husband and wife, she kissed me just long enough for the cameras, then pulled away quickly, whispering, "Don't mess up the lipstick." Everyone cheered. And I smiled, pretending to be the happiest man alive. But deep inside, a quiet voice whispered something I couldn't ignore anymore. This isn't love. It's a performance, and I had no idea the curtain was about to fall. The reception hall was stunning. Golden chandeliers, a live string quartet, and tables lined with white roses. Everyone was laughing, drinking, and dancing, the perfect illusion of joy. I sat at the head table, watching Lauren glide through the crowd like she was born for it. She wasn't my wife celebrating her marriage. She was the star of a red carpet premiere. Every gesture, every laugh felt rehearsed. For a while, I tried to convince myself to enjoy it. I even joked with my best man, who whispered, "You okay?" I forced a smile. Yeah, just soaking it all in. But my chest felt tight. There was a hollowness in my stomach I couldn't shake, like I was watching someone else's life play out, while mine stood still. Then it happened. As I walked past the bar to get some air, I overheard Lauren talking to her maid of honor. I froze when I heard my name. "Can you believe he actually wore those shoes?" she said, laughing under her breath. I swear, sometimes I feel like I'm marrying a project. But hey, at least he's loyal. That's rare these days. Her friend giggled. "You're terrible," Lauren smirked. "I'm just saying. He's sweet, but he's not exactly my level." My parents said, "Love is cute, but image matters." They were right. I don't even remember how long I stood there, just the feeling. That strange cold emptiness that starts in your chest and spreads until you can't breathe. I'd given everything, every dollar, every ounce of effort just to be her equal. And in her eyes, I was nothing but a charity case. I turned and walked out to the balcony. The night air bit against my skin, the music faint behind me. My hands shook, not from anger, from clarity. Because in that moment, something inside me snapped. Not in rage, but in resolve. And I knew, before the night was over, this wedding would end in a way no one expected. I stood outside for a long time, staring at the lights twinkling over the city skyline. The muffled music and laughter inside sounded distant, like another world I didn't belong to. My breath came out in slow, heavy clouds as I tried to calm the storm building inside me. I replayed her words again and again. A project not my level. It didn't even sound like my wife talking. It sounded like a stranger dissecting me in front of her friends. When my best man came out to check on me, I forced a weak smile. "You ever have one of those moments," I said, "where you suddenly see everything for what it really is?" He looked at me, concerned, but didn't push. He just said, "Whatever you're thinking of doing, make sure it's something you can live with." Then he went back inside. I leaned against the railing, gripping it until my knuckles turned white. I thought about every overtime shift, every small sacrifice, every time I'd swallowed my pride just to keep the peace. And for what? To be a prop in someone else's fantasy. My entire body trembled, not from anger, but from the realization that this wasn't a mistake or misunderstanding. This was who she truly was. When I walked back inside, something in me had changed. I wasn't the nervous groom anymore. I was calm, unnervingly calm, the kind of calm that comes when you've already decided what needs to be done. The DJ was setting up for our first dance. The lights dimmed, the chatter softened, and the song started to play. Lauren turned to me, smiling like nothing had happened. She leaned close and whispered, "Try not to step on my dress this time." That was it, the last straw. My pulse steadied. I looked at her, at the crowd, at the cameras flashing, and I knew before this song ended, everyone in that room would see the truth I'd been hiding. I just had to decide how to begin. The song had barely reached its first verse when I took a slow step back. The room, full of smiling faces and flashing cameras, blurred around me. Lauren looked confused, still posing for photos, still pretending. My hands trembled, but not from nerves anymore, from the adrenaline of a decision I couldn't take back. I turned toward the DJ. "Hey," I said, loud enough for the mic to catch. "Cut the music." The song stopped mid-beat. Laughter faltered. Forks clinked against plates as everyone turned to look at me. I could feel 100 eyes on my back. Lauren's smile froze, her expression tightening. "What are you doing?" she hissed under her breath, still trying to keep her face composed for the cameras. I took the microphone from the DJ. My voice cracked at first, but I steadied it. "I just want to say something," I began. "Something honest." Lauren whispered harshly, "Don't you dare ruin this night." I looked at her, the woman I'd loved. The woman I thought I knew, and for the first time, I didn't feel small anymore. I felt done. "I've spent months trying to make this day perfect," I said, my voice echoing through the hall. Working late, selling things I cared about, doing everything I could to make her dream come true. Because I thought that's what love was. But tonight, I learned something. I paused. The room was dead silent. I could hear someone's phone recording, "Love isn't about money or image. It's about respect. And when someone tells you you're an embarrassment for wearing cheap shoes, they don't love you. They love the idea of you." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Lauren's face drained of color. "Stop this right now," she whispered, her voice shaking. But I wasn't finished. I turned to the guests, her friends, her family, the people she'd been so desperate to impress, and said quietly, "You all came to see a fairy tale. Well, here's the truth." And as I handed the mic back to the DJ, the room erupted in chaos. The silence that followed my words lasted only a heartbeat before the room exploded. Guests shifted uncomfortably, some whispering, others gasping outright. I saw Lauren's mother's hand fly to her chest, her father muttering something under his breath. A few of my friends stood frozen, unsure if they should intervene or just watch the disaster unfold. Lauren reached for me, her voice trembling but sharp enough to slice through the noise. "You've humiliated me," she hissed. "You're ruining everything." "Everything," I said quietly. "You mean the show?" That made her flinch. She tried to grab the mic again, but the DJ had already cut the sound, unsure what to do. Cameras were flashing everywhere, phones raised, faces lit by the glow of screens. Someone whispered, "Is this real?" I took off the wedding ring. It felt heavy, like a symbol of every compromise I'd made. I set it gently on the table next to the cake and said, just loud enough for her to hear, "I hope you get the pictures you wanted." Then I turned and walked toward the exit. Each step felt unreal, like walking out of a nightmare I'd been trapped in for years. Behind me, I heard Lauren shouting my name, the click of her heels against the floor as she tried to follow. A few people called after me, but no one stopped me. No one knew what to say. When I stepped outside, the cool night air hit me like freedom. The sounds of chaos inside faded behind the thick glass doors. I loosened my tie, took one long breath, and for the first time all day, I felt alive. My best man caught up with me in the parking lot. "You really did it," he said, half in awe, half in shock. "Yeah?" I murmured, staring at the sky. Guess I finally stopped pretending. But even as I drove away, the cheers and whispers of that room echoed in my head, and I couldn't tell if I'd just saved myself or destroyed everything. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing nonstop. For a few seconds, I forgot everything: the lights, the speech, the way Lauren's face crumpled when the truth hit her. But then I saw the notifications. My name was everywhere. A guest had filmed the entire thing: my speech, her reaction, the walkout. The video had gone viral overnight. Hundreds of thousands of views, comments flooding in. Some people called me brave. Others called me cruel. My stomach twisted as I scrolled. Legend, one comment read. "He exposed a gold digger, live," another said. "Imagine being dumped at your own wedding." I threw the phone aside, buried my face in my hands, and just sat there. It wasn't triumph I felt, it was exhaustion, the kind that seeps into your bones. Lauren's number flashed on the screen. I didn't answer. Then her mother called, then her father. Then a string of unknown numbers. My best man finally texted. "They're furious. Don't pick up." I left the apartment, hoping a drive would clear my head. But everywhere I went, it felt like people were staring. Maybe they recognized me. Maybe it was in my head. Either way, I felt exposed, stripped bare in front of the world. That night, I finally got a message from Lauren. Just one line: "You ruined my life. I'll never forgive you." I stared at it for a long time, wondering how she could still see herself as the victim. A part of me wanted to reply, to explain that I hadn't meant for it to go public. But another part, the part that had been stepped on, belittled, and dismissed, stayed silent. I deleted her number. Then I sat in the dark for hours, wondering if I'd done the right thing, or if I'd just traded one kind of humiliation for another. And for the first time, I felt the full weight of the fallout I'd unleashed. The days that followed were a strange mix of chaos and clarity. My face was still being shared online, clips from the wedding dissected by strangers who knew nothing about me. Some praised me as a hero. Others said I was immature, vindictive. But I stopped reading after a while because none of those people had been in my shoes. Literally or metaphorically. I spent a lot of time alone. I took walks at night, replayed everything in my head, the good, the bad, the humiliating. There were moments I questioned myself deeply. Maybe I should have just walked away quietly. Maybe I'd made things worse by making it public. But then I'd remember the way she looked at me, like I was something to be corrected, not loved. and that guilt would turn back into something steadier. Conviction. A message came through from someone I hadn't heard from in years. My old college roommate. He said, saw the video. Just wanted to say, proud of you for not letting someone break you down. That hit harder than I expected. Slowly, the noise began to fade. The phone stopped buzzing as often. People moved on to the next viral thing, and I started to rebuild not just my routine, but my sense of self. I picked up freelance projects again. I fixed my old car. I even dug out my grandfather's watch, the one I sold to help pay for the wedding, and found it online for resale. Cost me more this time, but it was worth it. One afternoon while cleaning, I found a receipt for Lauren's wedding shoes. Over $1,200. I laughed for the first time in weeks. Not out of bitterness, but out of relief, because I finally understood. I hadn't ruined a wedding. I'd escaped a performance. And for once, I wasn't apologizing for being real. I still had healing to do. But the man I saw in the mirror, he was finally starting to feel like me again. A few months later, I found myself walking past a small thrift store downtown. Nothing fancy, just a dusty little place tucked between a bakery and a locksmith. In the window, there was a pair of black dress shoes. Worn but polished. Simple. Familiar. I don't know why. But I stepped inside. They were almost identical to the ones I wore on my wedding day, the ones Lauren had called cheap. I picked them up, turning them over in my hands. There was nothing flashy about them. No gold trim, no designer logo. Just solid, dependable leather. The shop owner noticed me holding them. Good eye, he said. Reliable pair. They've seen some things, but still got life in them. I smiled. Yeah, I said quietly. I know the feeling. I bought them on the spot. Didn't even haggle. And when I got home, I set them beside my door, not to wear, but to remind myself of everything I walked away from. Not just a toxic relationship, but a life where I was constantly trying to prove my worth to someone who never really saw me. People still bring up the video sometimes. At parties, at work, even on dates. Wait, you're that guy? They'll say. Some think it's funny. Others get quiet, like they don't know how to respond. I've learned to just nod and say, yeah, that was me. And then I move on. Because the truth is, that moment, as dramatic and messy as it was, didn't break me. It woke me up. It forced me to draw a line between love and performance. Between being valued and being used. I'm not angry anymore. Just clearer, stronger. And every time I glance at those shoes by the door, I remember something Lauren could never understand. It was never about what I wore. It was about who I refused to become.